On December 12, 2018, Roberto Fernandez, a 29-year-old Spanish tourist from Barcelona, mysteriously disappeared from Miami International Airport during a layover on his way back to Spain after a month-long backpacking trip through South America, leaving behind only questions that would torment his family and baffle authorities for 5 long years. Roberto, a freelance photographer who had been documenting indigenous communities across Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador for a cultural magazine, had arrived at MIA on Delta Flight 441 from Lima at 2:15 p.m., with a scheduled connection to Madrid, departing at 8:30 p.m. that same evening. Security cameras captured him collecting his checked luggage at baggage claim, going through customs without incident, and rechecking his large backpack for his international connection, appearing relaxed and excited to return home after what he had described to friends as the adventure of a lifetime. Where are you reading from? Share your city and country in the comments before we continue this story. His girlfriend Elena, waiting for him in Barcelona, became concerned when Roberto failed to board his connecting flight and didn't respond to her messages, prompting her to contact both Spanish consular services and Miami airport authorities. The initial investigation revealed that Roberto had passed through security checkpoints normally, had purchased coffee and souvenirs at duty-free shops, and had been seen by multiple witnesses in the international terminal, but then seemed to vanish without explanation during the busy holiday travel season. His passport showed no record of leaving the United States. His credit cards showed no activity after his airport purchases, and his cell phone went straight to voicemail after 6:00 p.m. that evening, creating a mystery that would consume thousands of investigative hours across 2 continents. Airport security reviewed hundreds of hours of surveillance footage, but discovered several critical gaps in coverage during the exact time frame when Roberto disappeared. Gaps that investigators initially attributed to routine maintenance, but later suspected might have been deliberately created. 5 years later, the discovery of Roberto's missing luggage in an abandoned storage facility would finally reveal the shocking truth about his disappearance and expose a criminal conspiracy that had been operating within one of America's busiest international airports. The investigation into Roberto Fernandez's disappearance quickly revealed the challenges of tracking a missing person in one of the world's busiest airports, where over 45 million passengers transit annually, and where the sheer volume of people and activity can easily obscure individual movements and activities. Detective Lieutenant Sarah Martinez of the Miami-Dade Police Department, who specialized in missing persons cases at transportation hubs, discovered that Roberto had been carrying valuable photography equipment worth approximately $15,000, including professional cameras, lenses, and a laptop containing thousands of photographs from his South American journey. The investigation revealed that Roberto had been documenting not just indigenous cultures, but also environmental destruction and illegal mining operations in remote areas of Peru and Bolivia, photography that had attracted the attention of both conservation groups and potentially dangerous individuals involved in illegal activities. His social media posts from the weeks before his disappearance showed images of deforestation, mercury contamination from illegal gold mining, and indigenous communities being displaced by criminal organizations, content that had generated both praise from environmental activists and concerning private messages from anonymous accounts, warning him to stop taking pictures of things that don't concern you. Airport employees who had interacted with Roberto remembered him as friendly and talkative, mentioning to several people that he was excited to develop his photographs and write articles about the environmental crimes he had witnessed, unaware that his documentation might have made him a target. The investigation expanded to include interviews with passengers who had been on Roberto's flight from Lima, revealing that several had noticed him being approached by men in airport security uniforms who had asked to inspect his camera equipment, an interaction that seemed routine at the time but took on sinister implications when Roberto subsequently disappeared. Customs records showed that Roberto's luggage had been flagged for additional inspection, officially due to the large amount of electronic equipment he was carrying. but investigators later discovered that the inspection had been conducted by individuals whose credentials could not be verified through normal channels. The case attracted international attention when Spanish media began reporting on Roberto's environmental photography and the possibility that his disappearance was connected to his documentation of illegal activities in South America, prompting involvement from Interpol and environmental crime units from multiple countries. The 5 years following Roberto's disappearance were marked by relentless efforts by his family and Spanish authorities to maintain international pressure for answers, while the case became a symbol of the dangers faced by environmental journalists and photographers working in conflict zones. Elena Morales, Roberto's girlfriend, became a tireless advocate for missing persons, establishing the Roberto Fernandez Foundation to support families of journalists and photographers who disappear while documenting environmental crimes and human rights abuses. She traveled repeatedly to Miami, working with private investigators, meeting with FBI agents, and maintaining contact with environmental organizations that had been following Roberto's work and believed his disappearance was connected to the powerful interests he had been exposing through his photography. Roberto's parents, Miguel and Carmen Fernandez, used their retirement savings to hire international security consultants and legal experts who specialized in cases involving missing persons in foreign countries. But despite their efforts, the trail remained cold, and authorities seemed unable to make progress in determining what had happened to their son. The Spanish government formally requested assistance from U.S. authorities through diplomatic channels, with the Spanish ambassador to the United States personally meeting with FBI leadership to emphasize the importance of solving the case and the international implications of an environmental journalist disappearing on American soil. Environmental organizations adopted Roberto's case as a symbol of the risks faced by those who document ecological crimes, organizing annual events in his honor, and maintaining pressure on both Spanish and American authorities to continue their investigation despite the lack of new leads. The case inspired changes in how environmental journalists and photographers approach dangerous assignments, with new safety protocols and communication systems designed to protect those who risk their lives to expose environmental destruction and illegal activities. Roberto's photography from South America was posthumously published in a book titled Voices from the Forest, which became an international bestseller and brought global attention to the environmental issues he had been documenting, ensuring that his work would continue to have impact even in his absence. Private investigators hired by the family followed leads that took them from Miami to Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia, investigating the possibility that Roberto had been targeted by criminal organizations involved in illegal mining and deforestation. But these investigations yielded no concrete evidence about his fate or whereabouts. On August 15, 2023, nearly 5 years after Roberto Fernandez's disappearance, maintenance workers renovating an abandoned storage facility near Miami International Airport made a discovery that would finally provide answers to one of the most perplexing missing person cases in recent aviation history. The workers, employed by a demolition company preparing the site for redevelopment, found Roberto's distinctive blue and orange backpack hidden behind false walls in a section of the facility that had been sealed since 2019, suggesting that whoever had placed it there had intended for it never to be found. When airport security and FBI agents carefully opened the backpack in the presence of Spanish consular officials, they discovered not only Roberto's photography equipment and personal belongings, but also a hidden compartment containing a memory card with thousands of photographs that revealed the true scope of his environmental documentation and the reasons for his disappearance. The photographs showed detailed evidence of illegal mining operations, including images of heavy machinery, environmental destruction, and most importantly, clear photographs of individuals involved in the operations, including some who appeared to be American citizens coordinating with South American criminal organizations. Among the most damning evidence was a series of photographs taken at Miami International Airport itself, showing Roberto's own surveillance and documentation of what appeared to be a smuggling operation involving precious metals and gems being transported through the airport by individuals connected to the illegal mining operations he had been investigating. The memory card also contained audio recordings Roberto had made, including conversations he had secretly recorded with individuals who had approached him about his photography, conversations that revealed threats against his life and demands that he stop documenting environmental crimes and turn over all his photographs to unnamed parties. Most shocking of all, the backpack contained a letter Roberto had written but never sent, addressed to Elena, in which he described being followed since his arrival in Miami, his growing fear that he was in danger, and his decision to hide his most important photographs and evidence in case something happened to him. The letter revealed that Roberto had discovered the illegal mining operations were connected to a larger network that included American companies and individuals, and that his photography had inadvertently documented evidence of money laundering and environmental crimes that could implicate powerful interests in both the United States and South America. The evidence found in Roberto's hidden backpack triggered a massive international investigation that exposed a sophisticated criminal network operating between South America and the United States, using Miami International Airport as a hub for smuggling precious metals obtained through illegal mining operations that were destroying vast areas of Amazon rainforest. The photographs and recordings led to the identification of Marcus Webb, an airport security contractor who had been using his access credentials to facilitate the movement of smuggled goods through the airport, and who had been responsible for intercepting Roberto when his photography equipment was flagged for inspection. Under interrogation, Webb confessed to his role in Roberto's disappearance, but claimed that the photographer's death had been unintentional, occurring during an attempt to force him to turn over his photographs and agree to remain silent about what he had witnessed. According to Webb's confession, Roberto had been taken to a secure area of the airport under the pretense of a routine security inspection, but when he refused to cooperate with demands to delete his photographs and sign a non-disclosure agreement, a struggle ensued that resulted in his accidental death. Webb revealed that Roberto's body had been disposed of through connections with the criminal network, transported out of the airport in a cargo container, and ultimately cremated at a facility in the Everglades, ensuring that no physical evidence of his death would ever be discovered. The investigation expanded to include multiple federal agencies and international law enforcement organizations, leading to the arrest of 23 individuals across 4 countries, including executives from American mining equipment companies, South American cartel members, and corrupt officials who had been facilitating the illegal operations. The network had been responsible for the destruction of over 100,000 acres of Amazon rainforest and the displacement of dozens of indigenous communities, generating hundreds of millions of dollars in illegal profits that were being laundered through legitimate businesses in Miami and other American cities. Roberto's photographs provided crucial evidence that allowed prosecutors to build cases against the network's leaders, with his documentation serving as the foundation for environmental crime prosecutions that resulted in some of the largest fines and prison sentences in the history of international environmental law enforcement. The case also revealed that Roberto had not been the only journalist targeted by the network. At least 3 other environmental reporters had disappeared or been killed in South America while investigating similar operations, suggesting a systematic campaign to silence those who threatened to expose the criminal enterprise. The trial of Marcus Webb and his co-conspirators became a landmark case in environmental crime prosecution, drawing international attention to the connections between organized crime, environmental destruction, and the targeting of journalists who expose ecological crimes. Webb was charged with kidnapping, manslaughter, and conspiracy to commit environmental crimes, while his co-conspirators faced charges ranging from money laundering to racketeering, with prosecutors seeking maximum sentences to send a message that environmental crimes and violence against journalists would not be tolerated. Elena Morales testified powerfully about the impact of Roberto's disappearance on his family and the environmental movement, describing 5 years of uncertainty and grief, while emphasizing that Roberto's work had ultimately helped expose crimes that were destroying irreplaceable ecosystems and indigenous communities. The prosecution presented Roberto's photographs and recordings as evidence not only of the crimes committed by the network, but also of his courage and dedication to environmental protection, arguing that his death represented an attack on press freedom and environmental advocacy that demanded the strongest possible response from the justice system. Environmental experts testified about the devastating impact of the illegal mining operations Roberto had documented, explaining how the destruction of Amazon rainforest contributed to climate change and threatened the survival of indigenous peoples who had lived sustainably in these areas for thousands of years. The defense attempted to portray Webb as a low-level employee who had been following orders from higher-ups in the criminal organization, but evidence showed that he had been actively involved in planning Roberto's interception and had received substantial payments for his role in the conspiracy. After a trial that lasted 4 months and included testimony from witnesses in 5 countries, Webb was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while his co-conspirators received sentences ranging from 20 to 40 years, marking a significant victory in the fight against environmental crime and violence against journalists. The convictions also resulted in the seizure of assets worth over $500 million, money that was used to fund reforestation projects in the Amazon and compensation for indigenous communities that had been displaced by the illegal mining operations Roberto had been documenting. The resolution of Roberto Fernandez's case catalyzed significant changes in airport security protocols, environmental crime enforcement, and protection measures for journalists working on dangerous assignments, transforming a personal tragedy into a force for positive change across multiple sectors. Miami International Airport implemented the Fernandez Protocol, requiring enhanced background checks for all security personnel, real-time monitoring of employee access to restricted areas, and mandatory reporting procedures for any unusual interactions with passengers carrying journalism or research equipment. The Roberto Fernandez Foundation, established by Elena, expanded its mission to provide security training, equipment, and emergency support for environmental journalists and photographers working in high-risk areas, helping to prevent future tragedies, while ensuring that important environmental stories continue to be told. The foundation also developed partnerships with major news organizations to create rapid response teams that can investigate immediately when environmental journalists go missing, providing resources and expertise that can make the difference between life and death in critical situations. Roberto's photographs were compiled into a traveling exhibition that toured museums and universities worldwide, educating millions of people about environmental crimes and the risks faced by those who document them, while generating funds to support continued environmental protection efforts in the Amazon and other threatened ecosystems. The case inspired new international agreements on protecting environmental journalists, with the United Nations adopting the Roberto Fernandez Principles that establish standards for investigating crimes against environmental reporters and providing support for their families when they are targeted for their work. Law enforcement agencies developed new training programs based on Roberto's case, teaching investigators how to recognize and investigate environmental crimes that cross international borders and involve complex networks of criminals, corrupt officials, and legitimate businesses. The environmental movement adopted Roberto as a martyr and symbol of the ultimate sacrifice that some make to protect the planet, with annual awards given in his name to journalists and photographers who demonstrate exceptional courage in documenting environmental destruction and holding polluters accountable. His story became required reading in journalism schools and environmental studies programs, ensuring that future generations of reporters and activists understand both the importance of environmental journalism and the very real dangers that can accompany this vital work. 10 years after Roberto's disappearance, his legacy continued to influence environmental protection efforts and journalist safety measures around the world, with his story serving as both inspiration and warning for those who choose to document environmental crimes despite personal risks. The Roberto Fernandez Foundation had grown into an international organization operating in 30 countries, providing security training and emergency support to over 1,000 environmental journalists annually, while also funding investigative projects that continued Roberto's work of exposing environmental destruction and illegal resource extraction. Elena Morales had become a globally recognized expert on journalist safety and environmental crime, working with organizations like Reporters Without Borders and Greenpeace to develop new strategies for protecting those who risk their lives to document ecological destruction and hold powerful interests accountable. The Foundation's rapid response teams had successfully assisted in the rescue of 15 environmental journalists who had been kidnapped or threatened while working on dangerous assignments, proving that Roberto's death had ultimately saved other lives by inspiring better protection measures for vulnerable reporters. Miami International Airport had become a model for security protocols designed to protect journalists and researchers, with its enhanced screening procedures and employee monitoring systems being adopted by airports worldwide as best practices for preventing criminal infiltration of transportation infrastructure. The Environmental Crimes Unit of the FBI had expanded significantly in response to Roberto's case, with new resources and expertise dedicated to investigating the complex international networks that profit from environmental destruction, while silencing those who try to expose their activities. Roberto's photographs continued to be used as evidence in environmental crime prosecutions around the world, with his documentation helping to convict dozens of additional criminals and recover millions of dollars in illegal profits that were redirected toward environmental restoration projects. The Amazon regions where Roberto had worked had seen significant improvements in protection and monitoring, with new satellite surveillance systems and indigenous community partnerships helping to detect and prevent illegal mining operations before they could cause irreversible damage. His story had inspired a new generation of environmental journalists who understood the risks but remained committed to the vital work of documenting environmental crimes, carrying forward Roberto's mission while benefiting from the safety measures and support systems that his sacrifice had helped create. 15 years after Roberto Fernandez's tragic disappearance, his influence on environmental journalism and protection measures had become institutionalized in international law and professional practice, ensuring that his sacrifice would continue to protect others and advance environmental protection for generations to come. The Roberto Fernandez International Court for Environmental Crimes had been established with funding from the criminal asset seizures resulting from his case, providing a specialized venue for prosecuting environmental crimes and protecting the rights of those who document ecological destruction. Elena Morales had been appointed as the court's first director of journalist protection, using her expertise and experience to develop comprehensive safety protocols that had been adopted by news organizations and environmental groups worldwide. The Foundation's training programs had evolved to include cutting-edge security technology, encrypted communication systems, and emergency extraction procedures that allowed environmental journalists to work safely in even the most dangerous locations while maintaining their ability to document and report on critical environmental issues. Roberto's case had inspired new international treaties on environmental crime and journalist protection, with over 100 countries signing agreements that established legal frameworks for investigating crimes against environmental reporters and providing support for their families and colleagues. The environmental movement had embraced Roberto as a patron saint of sorts, with his image and story used to inspire activism and remind people of the ultimate sacrifice that some make to protect the planet from those who would destroy it for profit. Universities around the world had established Roberto Fernandez chairs in environmental journalism, ensuring that his story and the lessons learned from his case would be taught to future generations of reporters, activists, and environmental scientists. The Amazon regions where he had worked had been designated as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, with his photographs serving as part of the documentation that demonstrated their global importance and the need for international protection from illegal mining and deforestation. Technology companies had developed new tools for environmental journalists inspired by Roberto's case, including satellite communication devices, hidden camera systems, and emergency alert applications that could help protect reporters while allowing them to continue their vital work of documenting environmental crimes. His legacy lived on in every environmental story that was safely reported, every illegal mining operation that was shut down, and every journalist who returned home safely from a dangerous assignment thanks to the protection measures that his sacrifice had inspired. Today, 2 decades after Roberto Fernandez disappeared from Miami International Airport, while carrying photographs that would expose international environmental crimes, his story continues to inspire and protect environmental journalists around the world, while serving as a powerful reminder of the deadly serious nature of environmental destruction and the courage required to document it. The memorial garden established at Miami International Airport in Roberto's honor has become a place of reflection for travelers and a symbol of the airport's commitment to protecting journalists and researchers who pass through its facilities, with his story displayed prominently to educate visitors about the importance of environmental protection and press freedom. Elena Morales, now in her 50s, continues to lead the Roberto Fernandez Foundation, while also serving as a consultant to international organizations working to protect environmental journalists. Her expertise born from tragedy, but channeled into preventing others from experiencing the loss and uncertainty she endured. The foundation operates programs in over 50 countries, having trained more than 5,000 environmental journalists in safety protocols, while providing emergency assistance to hundreds who found themselves in dangerous situations, while documenting environmental crimes and ecological destruction. Roberto's photographs, which ultimately cost him his life but helped convict dozens of environmental criminals, are permanently displayed at the United Nations headquarters in New York, serving as a testament to the power of documentation and the importance of protecting those who risk everything to expose environmental destruction. The Amazon regions he documented have seen significant recovery thanks to the protection measures and restoration projects funded by the criminal asset seizures from his case, with indigenous communities now serving as guardians of the forests he died trying to protect. His story is taught in journalism schools worldwide as both inspiration and cautionary tale, reminding future environmental reporters of the importance of their work, while emphasizing the need for proper safety measures and support systems when documenting dangerous subjects. The Roberto Fernandez Award for Environmental Journalism has become one of the most prestigious honors in the field, recognizing reporters and photographers who demonstrate exceptional courage in exposing environmental crimes while maintaining the highest standards of journalistic integrity. Law enforcement agencies continue to use his case as a training example, teaching investigators how to recognize and investigate environmental crimes while understanding the international networks that profit from ecological destruction and the lengths they will go to silence those who threaten their operations. Roberto's legacy reminds us that environmental protection often requires personal sacrifice, that journalism can be a dangerous profession when it threatens powerful interests, and that the courage of individuals like Roberto can ultimately triumph over those who would destroy our planet for profit, inspiring continued vigilance and action to protect both our environment and those who risk their lives to defend it.